She came home from work and found what nobody bothered to check, and then he called her hysterical. Imagine coming home after a full day of work, walking through the front door, and within minutes realizing that nobody did the one thing you specifically asked them to do. Not a complicated thing. Not an unreasonable thing. Just one simple task that you spelled out clearly in a group chat hours before you even got home. And now there is a tick on your 7-year-old nonverbal autistic brother's body, and your stepfather is standing there yelling at you and calling you hysterical while you try to help a child who cannot even tell you where it hurts. That is the situation. That is what she walked into. And she still handled it herself while the grown man in the room did absolutely nothing. So let us go back to the beginning, because this story deserves to be told properly. Our narrator is 23 years old and she lives at home with her mother, her stepfather, her 19-year-old sibling, her 13-year-old sister, and her 7-year-old brother who is nonverbal and autistic. That last detail matters enormously here, because a nonverbal child cannot advocate for themselves. He cannot say that something is wrong. He cannot say that something hurts. He cannot communicate that there is a bug attached to his skin. He cannot point to the spot or wince in a way that makes his meaning obvious. He is entirely dependent on the observation and attentiveness of the people around him, and that dependence is not occasional or situational. It is constant. It is every single day. The people in that house do not get to clock out from noticing things, because he never gets to clock out from needing them to. Today was a state park day. Her brother was going out into nature, into the kind of environment where ticks are absolutely a known and documented risk. Wooded trails, tall grass, shaded areas where ticks wait on low branches and brush against skin without anyone noticing. Before she left for work, she did the responsible thing. She sat down with her phone, thought ahead the way she always does, and sent a message to the entire family group chat, which included her mother, her stepfather, her sibling, and her sister, reminding everyone to check her brother for ticks when he got home. She did not mumble it in passing. She did not assume someone else would think of it. She put it in writing. She made it clear. She gave them every opportunity to be prepared so that when the moment came, there would be no excuse for forgetting. Her sister was at school and could not be there. That leaves 2 adults who were directly responsible for her brother that day. Her stepfather and her sibling. 2 people. 1 job. Check the kid for ticks when he gets home. That is it. That is the whole assignment. They did not do it. When she got home from work, she did not kick off her shoes and decompress the way a 23-year-old who just worked a full shift deserves to. Instead, she immediately tuned into her brother, watching him, reading his body language the way she has learned to do over years of paying attention to a child who communicates differently than most. And something told her to check. So she did it herself. She took off his school clothes carefully, she took off his diaper, and right there near his waist, exactly in the spot where a diaper would press against skin and hide something small from any casual glance, she found a tick. Partially embedded. Right there. She found it because she looked. She found it because she cared enough to actually do the thing she had asked everyone else to do, the thing that had apparently seemed too inconvenient for the 2 adults who had been home with him all afternoon. She immediately called for her sibling to bring tweezers and texted her mother at work to let her know what was happening. She was not panicking. She was not spiraling. Her voice was urgent because the situation was urgent, but her mind was already moving through the steps. Gather the tools, isolate the area, keep her brother calm, remove the tick properly. She was gathering resources and solving the problem in real time, which is exactly what you are supposed to do in that situation. And this is the moment where her stepfather decided to make himself the center of attention. He started yelling at her. He told her she was being hysterical. He insisted it was just a mole. He told her to shut up. Let that sit for a moment. His 7-year-old stepson had a tick embedded near his diaper line, and this man's contribution to the situation was to stand there, raise his voice at the person actually helping, and dismiss the whole thing as nothing. He did not kneel down and look at the child. He did not offer to hold the tweezers or hold her brother still. He did not ask if she needed anything or if he could call someone. He just yelled. He planted himself in the room and used his voice as a weapon against the only person in that house who was doing something useful. She took her brother upstairs. With her siblings' help, they removed the tick together. And if you have ever had to remove a tick from a child, you know it is not a pleasant experience even under the best circumstances. You have to be steady. You have to get the tweezers as close to the skin as possible without squeezing the body of the tick. You have to pull slowly and evenly and hope that the head comes out cleanly. Now add in the fact that this child is nonverbal and autistic. He does not understand why someone is coming toward him with metal tweezers. He does not understand why there is tension in the room or why his sister looks worried. He only knows that something is happening to his body that he did not ask for and cannot make sense of, and that is terrifying. He was crying. He was flinching away from the tweezers with his whole body, curling and pulling back the way frightened children do when they want the discomfort to stop. He was overwhelmed in the way that a 7-year-old who cannot explain his fear becomes overwhelmed, fully and completely and without any ability to be reassured by words. And through all of that, her stepfather provided zero help. Not 1 ounce of support, comfort, or assistance. He was not there holding her brother's hand. He was not there murmuring something soothing near the doorway. He had simply removed himself from the difficulty he helped create. "I need to stop here for a second." This man told her to shut up. While she was trying to help a child. While she was doing his job. After the tick was removed, she was furious. Not just at her stepfather, but at her sibling too, who was also in the group chat, also received the same message and also chose not to follow through. The anger she felt was not just the sharp hot anger of a single bad moment. It was the deeper, heavier anger of someone who has had to carry more than their share for a long time and has just been reminded, once again, that the weight is not going to be shared willingly. She says she is pissed off in general, and honestly that is the only rational response to what just happened. She is sitting there supervising her brother's bath, watching him closely, checking his body language for any sign that something still feels wrong, worrying quietly that she might have missed something somewhere else on his skin, carrying the full weight of this situation on her own while the 2 adults who were supposed to be watching him go about their evening unbothered. Let us talk about what this moment reveals, because it is not just about one tick on one day. This is about a pattern of accountability, or rather the complete lack of it. She felt responsible enough to send that message before she even left the house. She anticipated the risk, she communicated it clearly, and she followed up the moment she got home. That is not the behavior of someone who overreacts. That is the behavior of someone who has learned, probably over many years and many smaller failures that came before this one, that if she does not stay on top of things, nobody else will. She has internalized a level of vigilance that no one should have to carry alone, and she carries it anyway, because the alternative is a 7-year-old boy who goes unprotected. The stepfather's reaction tells you everything you need to know about the dynamic in this house. When she found the tick and raised the alarm, his instinct was not to help. His instinct was to protect his own ego by insisting she was wrong. He called it a mole. He called her hysterical. He used aggressive language to shut her down rather than take 10 seconds to actually look at what she was pointing at. Because if he looked and she was right, that would mean he had failed. It would mean he had sat in that house all afternoon while a tick fed on a child he was responsible for, and he had done nothing about it. And apparently that possibility was more threatening to him than the actual well-being of a child in his care. It is easier to make her the problem than to be the person who dropped the ball. So that is what he chose. She is not hysterical. She is exhausted. There is a massive difference. Think about what it means to be the person in a family who always has to be the one paying attention. She works full-time. She comes home and immediately steps into a caretaking role for a vulnerable 7-year-old, not because someone asked her to, but because she loves him and she sees what he needs. She is the one who remembered to send the warning before sunrise. She is the one who found the tick when she walked in the door. She is the one who stayed steady while her brother cried and pulled away from the tweezers. She is the one sitting by the bathtub right now, keeping watch, making sure he is calm, making sure his breathing is even, making sure he is okay. At 23 years old, she is carrying more responsibility than the adult man who should be leading that household. Her worry about potentially missing other ticks is also completely valid. Ticks are small and they are patient. They hide in the folds behind knees, in hairlines at the back of the neck, behind ears, along waistbands, in places that require deliberate and careful looking to find. With a child who cannot tell you that something feels strange or itchy or wrong under his skin, the stakes are even higher because there is no backup system. There is no moment where he tugs on your sleeve and says something feels weird. The only safeguard is someone paying close enough attention. Her concern is not hysteria. It is medically grounded common sense, and anyone who has read even a single article about tick-borne illness knows exactly why she was right to feel it. The verdict here is not even a close call. She is not the asshole. She is not even close to being the asshole. She did everything right from the moment she woke up this morning to the moment she sat down next to that bathtub. She is angry, and she has every right to be. The people who failed are her stepfather, who was supposed to be an adult in charge and instead chose to yell at the person doing his job for him, and her sibling, who was also told and also did not follow through. But the stepfather deserves a special category of criticism here, because he did not just fail to check for ticks. He actively got in the way of the solution. He used his authority as an adult in that house to try to make her doubt herself when she was in the middle of handling a legitimate health concern for a child. He yelled at someone who was helping. He dismissed a real problem because admitting it was real meant admitting he had dropped the ball. That is cowardice dressed up as authority, and it is one of the most frustrating dynamics a person can be stuck inside of. She does not owe him an apology. She does not need to calm down. She needs him to sit with the discomfort of having been wrong, and she needs her family to understand that when she raises an alarm about her nonverbal brother's well-being, the correct response is to listen, not to yell at her to shut up. The last thing she said before signing off was that her brother is acting fine. And I genuinely hope he stays that way. But the real issue here is not the tick. The tick is gone. The real issue is that this little boy depends on the people around him to see things he cannot say, and today the people who were supposed to see it looked away, and then got angry at the person who did not. She came home from work and she protected her brother. Full stop. That makes her the only one in that house today who actually showed up. The school wants to post my child's photo online and my partner said yes without asking me first. 9:57 p.m. You have a photo of your child. It is apparently a beautiful photo, the kind where the lighting is perfect and everything just comes together exactly right. The school loves it and wants to post it online. Your partner says yes. And you are sitting there thinking, wait, I can see his ear. And I am not okay with this. Now before you close the tab, hear this out. Because this is not as simple as it sounds, and the conversation this couple is having is one that a lot of parents are quietly having right now, even if most of them have not put a name to exactly why they feel the way they do. So here is the situation. These two parents have made a deliberate and consistent decision to keep their children off the internet. Not a casual preference, not a vague feeling, but an actual policy they have applied across the board. Schools asking to use photos for promotional material, social channels, websites, all of it has been met with a no, because that is the choice they made together as parents. And that consistency matters. It is not random or reactionary. It is a considered position that they arrived at together, probably after real conversations about what they wanted for their child and what kind of digital world they were bringing him into. That kind of intentional parenting does not happen by accident. Someone thought about this, brought it to the table, and the other person agreed. That is a foundation. Then this particular photo comes along. The school wants it. It is gorgeous, apparently. Maybe the teacher caught him mid-laugh. Maybe the afternoon light came through the window at just the right angle and landed on him in a way that felt almost cinematic. Whatever it was, it moved people. And the partner says yes, just this once. Which is already a crack in the wall they built together, and that alone is worth paying attention to, because when you make joint parenting decisions and one person starts making exceptions without full agreement from the other, that is a conversation that needs to happen before the yes goes out the door. That small word, yes, carries all the weight of every prior no they said together. It undoes something. It says that the policy was flexible all along, that it just needed the right photo, the right moment, the right ask. And once one exception gets made, the next one is always easier to justify. But here is where the story gets specific and also where a lot of people started raising their eyebrows. Her stated reason for not wanting this particular photo posted is that her child's ear is clearly visible. She describes it as being like a second fingerprint. She is not worried about the face. She is worried about the ear. Okay, I have to be honest with you here. The ear thing caught me completely off guard. I had to read that twice. Now, the ear as biometric identifier angle is real. It is documented. Ear geometry is genuinely used in some biometric identification systems and researchers have studied it as a unique physical marker. So the concern is not invented out of nowhere. But in practice, the realistic threat model for a school posting a nice photo of a child on their social media is not a sophisticated biometric database attack targeting ear geometry. It is more straightforward concerns like stranger danger, digital footprint permanence, image scraping, and the basic loss of control over where a photo ends up once it is posted publicly. The gap between the documented science and the real-world risk here is wide enough to drive a truck through, and that is probably what made so many people in the comments do a double take. What is interesting about this story is not really the ear. It is what the ear represents. She has built a whole system of protection around her child's digital presence. She has said no consistently, probably more times than she can count, to requests that felt harmless on the surface, because she understood that every yes is a permanent one when it comes to the internet. She has held that line through school newsletters, classroom blogs, end-of-year slideshows, and whatever else gets quietly shared online without parents always realizing it. And now this photo appears, and it is beautiful, and her partner wants to say yes, and she is looking for the reason that justifies sticking to the position she has always held. The ear is the specific thing she latched onto. But the real thing underneath it is that she does not want her child's image online, period. She is not really arguing about ear geometry. She is arguing for the principle she has held all along, and she reached for the most concrete, specific language she could find to explain a feeling that is actually much larger and harder to articulate than any single body part. And that is a completely valid stance, even if the ear biometric framing is the part people found hardest to follow. Her edit at the end actually shows a lot of self-awareness. She acknowledges that people thought she was only focused on the ear to an extreme degree, clarifies that the face is visible and her child is the main subject of the photo, and then in her second edit she steps back entirely and says, okay, I get it. The ear concern is a stretch, the photo is not going online and I will keep that kind of worry to myself going forward. That is someone who was willing to hear feedback and adjust their framing without abandoning their underlying decision. That takes a certain kind of honesty, especially when you are already feeling defensive about something you care deeply about. Because the decision was always the right one. The ear reasoning may have been the wobbly part of the argument. But the conclusion was sound. Do not post the photo. Let us zoom out and talk about digital consent and children, because this is the actual heart of what this story is about. Children cannot consent to having their image on the internet. They are not old enough to understand what it means to have a photo indexed, shared, saved, screenshotted, and potentially redistributed beyond the original poster's control. They do not yet understand that something posted today by a well-meaning school administrator could still be sitting in a Google image cache a decade from now. They do not understand that once an image leaves the hands of the person who posted it, it belongs to the internet entirely. Once an image is public, you lose ownership of where it goes. That is not paranoia. That is just how the internet works, and pretending otherwise does not make it less true. Parents who choose to keep their children off social media entirely are making a protective decision that their child will one day be able to make for themselves. By the time this child is a teenager or an adult, they can decide what they want online and what they do not. They can choose to build a public presence or keep themselves private. They will have agency and understanding and the ability to weigh the consequences. If their parents post their photo now, that decision is already made for them, and they had no say in it. That choice, that quiet theft of future autonomy, is what parents like this mother are trying to prevent. Schools posting children's images for promotional content is a very common practice, and it is often genuinely harmless. But it is also genuinely optional. Schools ask for permission because they need it. And parents have every right to say no without needing to justify it with a biometric argument. The reason can simply be, we have decided our children are not online, and that is sufficient. Full stop. No further explanation owed. The one genuinely complicated part of this story is the partner dynamic. They had a shared policy. The partner broke from it unilaterally on this specific photo. Maybe he looked at the image and felt a rush of pride so strong that the old agreement just momentarily dissolved in his mind. Maybe he thought it was such a small thing that it barely counted. But it counted to her. And that gap in how seriously they each held the policy in that moment is something they will need to sit down and actually talk through, not because the photo matters anymore, but because the next beautiful photo is coming, and the one after that, and they need to be on the same page when it arrives. Because if you have agreed on something as parents and one of you starts making solo exceptions, the policy crumbles. It does not matter how beautiful the photo is. The agreement existed for a reason. She stood her ground and the photo is not going online. That is the correct outcome. Her reasoning for why this particular photo was the line in the sand was the shakiest part of the whole thing, and she acknowledged that gracefully at the end. But the core decision, protect your child's digital footprint, maintain the boundary you set as parents, do not let a beautiful photo be the reason you start making exceptions, that is all completely right. She is not the asshole. She is a parent who is thinking several steps ahead in a world where most people are not. The ear thing might be worth letting go of. But the no is worth keeping. Drop a comment letting me know which story hit harder for you. And if you made it this far, a like and a subscribe genuinely helps more than you know.